I'm David Alzamendi, independent data architect and consultant, and today we're going to be looking at one of the most amazing topics ever, licensing. All right, look, today we're going to be looking at the licensing as well as capacity planning and optimization. Let me just prepare the screens. The idea basically is to give you an overview on how pricing works in Microsoft Fabric, as well as to a few hints and tips on how you can optimize the ongoing cost of the Microsoft Fabric platform. And the idea that, look, all of us, we thought that licensing was going to be easier in Microsoft Fabric as it has been in other services like a SQL Server and so on. But you will see today when we start looking at the details and what the functional production environment should look like, it might get a little bit more complex than just getting one Fabric capacity, and that's all. So when you think of Microsoft Fabric, remember you will be looking at those two areas. But remember, so there are a few concepts that you have to understand. So first of all, your organization has a tenant, and within that tenant, you are going to have one or multiple Fabric capacities. Not only one, you will have multiple Fabric capacities in a production environment. That's the reality. You can budget for one, so allocate, just prepare one budget and call it Fabric capacities. But in a production environment, certainly you need more than one Fabric capacity. And we're going to explain why today. And you will allocate that Fabric capacity to one or multiple workspaces. The workspaces are basically the containers where you have your Fabric objects. Ideally, you will have one workspace for the reports, another workspace for your data stores, and you could have as well the domains. The domains basically is a logical group of workspaces for different, let's say, business units, departments, or domains. So it depends on how you want to group the workspaces in your organization. You might take advantage of the domains because domains are basically optional, so you don't have to use them. But the takeaway of this slide is that you will allocate Fabric capacities to one or multiple workspaces, and that you will have multiple Fabric capacities running in your environment. So pricing. So remember, Microsoft decouples storage from compute. So that means that your storage is going to be built separately than your Fabric capacity. That's really important to understand. You get some benefits. So that means that your storage can grow independently from your compute power, which is the Fabric capacity. So let's have a look at this, a few things in here. So the first one is that within each SKU in Microsoft Fabric, this is like a different tiers within the Microsoft Fabric capacity. You will get different capacity units per second. And you can see that the SKU name is basically the combination of the F for Fabric and the number of capacity units that you get per second. And it is important to understand the number of capacity units that you will get in different periods of time, because you can run out of resources in Microsoft Fabric. So things can stop working. And this is something that you have to remember. So if you use all the capacity units within a period of 24 hours, and this is a moving window, your whole system might stop working. And that's something, this is a new model that I know many of us, we don't like it, right? So we don't like the idea of having a system that stops working because we used all our credits. But that's how it is right now. There are a few updates in this area. You have a model, pay-as-you-go model for your Apache Spark jobs and so on. but you can still run out of resources. And we've seen this. If you've been using Microsoft Fabric, I've seen users being delayed for querying the reports because they have used all the resources within a period of an hour or so, or 10 minutes. So remember, so there are a few policies that you have to consider in regards to usage. Go and check out my video from a couple of weeks ago where I mentioned what happens actually and what those limits are. On top of that, let's go and have a look at the most exciting thing, licensing in Microsoft Fabric. So let's open this link over here and we'll navigate to licensing in Microsoft Fabric. Okay. So this is a good example. This is going to highlight what you get within each Microsoft Fabric here. So remember, there are different SKUs. So we move away from the Power BI model. This is going to be different. Hopefully this Microsoft consolidates the different models under the Fabric banner, but we still have to see that. But anything related to Power BI is still the same. A few things change in regards to Power BI Embedded, but you know, anything related to Power BI Pro and Premium per user stays the same, except that for the price increase, as you know, of the two models. And then Power BI Embedded, I highly suggest to see if you want to offer that as part of Microsoft Fabric, because each one of the SKUs in Microsoft Fabric comes with Power BI Embedded capabilities, which is great. Now, the performance of Power BI Embedded under the Power BI Embedded offering, as in comparison to the Fabric Embedded offering, is different. That's something that you have to take into account. Let me go and show you what I mean. Let's quickly jump into the Azure portal. We'll cover this embedded bit and we'll go back to the Fabric pricing. So if you are in the Azure portal, you will see that you have Power BI Embedded as a standalone service, and the Power BI Embedded capabilities, they are being offered as part of Microsoft Fabric as well. Right now, there is not a parity of functionality between the two of them. There are a few things that you cannot do in the Microsoft Fabric embedding offering that you can still do with the Power BI Embedded offering. That will change, of course, in the future, but to take into account. All right, let's forget about that. Let's go back to pricing. What do we get with Fabric? So you have two different models that you can follow. One is the reservation, and the other one is the pay-as-you-go model. And within those models, you can go and get different SKUs. We are going to look at that. You can see that between the reservation, let's see if we can hide this. No, okay. So between the reservation and the pay-as-you-go model, we have essentially the same offering as such. The free account, as such, you know, it's like a Power BI free account. I wouldn't even take that into account for an enterprise environment. If you're doing learning or you want to try a few things, yeah, you can go and get a free account. And of course, you can get a trial capacity, which is great. And they give you up right currently 60 days of free trial capacity. But from an enterprise point of view, you will always look at the reservation pricing model or the pay-as-you-go model. So when you look at the pay-as-you-go model and the reservation models, you will get a discount with the reservation. But before we move on, this is important for all of us. So what this means in here, it means that any user who wants to only consume the reports, like view the reports, they will get that for free if the SKU is F64 or higher than that. Now, on top of that, if you are planning to essentially create reports, so if you have report producers, you will have to get the Power BI Pro or Premium per user license for them, independently of the SKU. So let's go and check out the Fabric pricing, and you will see what I mean. So these are the different SKUs. You get different capacity units per SKU. You can see, so different capacity units. Remember, that's the number of capacity units that you get per second. And you can see that number matching here. And then you have a pay-as-you-go model and the reservation model. And upfront, you can see it's a huge discount. Okay, you get a 41% discount if you go with the reservation. And look at the F64 at the bottom. So remember, independently of the SKU, if you are going to have Power BI developers, people creating reports, you have to get an additional Power BI Pro license or premium per user license for them. That's a given. But now, if you're planning to make all the reports available to thousands of users or 500 users, you get that for free starting at the tier F64. So what happens if you are in an F4? So if you are in a capacity F4, any report producers, any person creating reports needs a Power BI Pro license or premium per user, and any consumer, any person viewing the report as well needs a Power BI Pro license. And that's the difference, right? So that means that if you have, let's say 500, let's say that you have 500 users who are going to be viewing reports, right? So you know that if you go with less than F64, you will have to get at the bare minimum a Power BI Pro license. And that is going to be 700, let's see, actually, that much. $7,500 for you getting Power BI Pro licenses. And correct me in the chat if I'm wrong with the math, okay? I'm doing this on the fly. But if you are planning to offer those reports to 500 users, so you will have to get $7,500 in licensing if you go with a tier less than F64. So you might decide to essentially go and allocate this budget to acquire an F64 capacity. Especially when you look at the discounts in here, that it could be more cost effective to go that path. Now, I'm not talking about, I know many of you, if you're in a non-profit organization, maybe in education, you get a discount on the Power BI Pro licenses. They are cheaper for you, but still the same idea applies. So make sure that you understand how many people are going to be consuming the reports, because the people who are going to create the reports, they still have to have a Power BI Pro license in here. So SKUs, pay-as-you-go, I think we understand that model quite well. But let's have a look at the reservations. Many times I think that reservations might go unnoticed on how you can apply it. And I'm going to scroll down. This is essentially how you acquire the reservations. Let's go over here. So let me move this there. Scroll down. This is how you get the reservation. But I want to show you something that is really important here. So when you get the reservation, basically what you're acquiring is capacity units for a period of 1 month, right? The way that you use those capacity units are by the hour or by the second. So let's go back to the pricing option here. If I have closed it, so let me open this in a different window. So when you get the capacity, basically you commit at spending this number of capacity units within a specific period of time. It's not that you acquire, all the capacity units for the month and you can use them whenever you want, actually. No, you have to use them within an hour, I believe. We're going to check that. if you don't use them within that hour, so you're going to lose that benefit. So those are capacity units that you are wasting and you won't recover them. So knowing that, let's look at these examples. So when you get basically a reservation that matches the capacity units, the fabric capacity that you are using, you get essentially a full discount of the capacity units by using reservation. But look at this example here. If you get a reservation that is 64 capacity units, but then you only have a fabric capacity F32 running, you can't carry forward unused reserved capacity units. So let's go again. For you to get the reservation, there are two things that have to happen. The first one is that you have to get the fabric capacity. So you can come here and get your fabric capacities. Independently of if you want a pay-as-you-go model or a reservation model, you have to get the capacity. And on top of that, if you want to apply the reservation, you will go to the reservation section and purchase a capacity reservation that will be applied as a discount to your fabric capacity. On top of that, remember, so those resources, if you don't use them within that specific hour, you will lose them. So coming back to our previous example, what does it mean? So it means that if you don't use the number of capacity units that they have been allocated to the reservation, you lose them. Okay, I think that's clear. It doesn't mean that you get the reservation and you get 200,000 capacity units that you can use whenever you want. It doesn't work that way. So it goes by the hour. But that's not so bad when you look at the following example, because a reservation that is, let's say, let's look example number 3, that is smaller than the capacity units that you're using. Let's say that you have a fabric capacity running F128, but you get the reservation for 64 capacity units. These 64 capacity units, they will be applied as a discount to your fabric capacity ongoing cost. On top of that, I'll show you something with reservations that is unnoticed many times. So when you're applying when you get a reservation, you can apply a different scope. So you can apply that reservation to a specific resource group only, to a subscription, to management groups, or to a shared scope. And why is that important? Because if you have multiple fabric capacities running in your environment, you might get a reservation that you want to use across multiple fabric capacities. And that's where the real benefit is with reservations as well. So let's imagine for a second. Let's say that you have 3 fabric capacities running at F16. Okay, the total number will be like basically an F48 capacity, which doesn't exist, but 3 times 16 is essentially 48. So that means that if you're looking at a reservation, you could just get a reservation for 48 capacity units, just one reservation, and apply that as a shared reservation across multiple resource groups or management groups, which is great. So it simplifies actually how you can apply those reservations. The same happens with the idea of having a development environment and a production environment. You might just get one reservation with multiple capacity units that covers both the development and the production workloads. That's where I see a lot of benefit with the Microsoft Fabric capacity reservations. So let's go back one more second to show you about reservations. I think that's clear. The discount, I think, is great. I remember initially when they released this, there was a 1 year option and a 3 year option, and now everything is just one option, 41% discount. I think is quite good. My recommendation is always, I think the recommendation of many fabric individuals is that, look, start with the pay-as-you-go model. Start with this model, do all your testing, and once the system is a little bit stable, move to reservation capacity. You can also move to reservation, and if you want to cancel it, I do recommend looking at the fine print. Let's see and have a quick look at canceling reservations. They are quite flexible on getting giving you canceling the reservations, but actually make sure you look at the terms and conditions, because in many cases they might, the terms and conditions, they might say that they give you a percentage return or similar situations like that. I haven't seen that happening. Every time that I have canceled a reservation, they've been quite flexible in regards to the terms and conditions. It doesn't take away, okay, that it is good to be familiar with the terms and conditions before you go and agree and on getting a reservation, that it could be a costly ongoing cost. But definitely, start from a pay-as-you-go model and then move to a reservation model. That's the idea. This is licensing at a high level. Recently, so last week, as part of Microsoft Fabric conference, so there is as well something that you have to take into account, is that they are retiring the Power BI Premium option. And what this essentially means is that you have to move eventually to a Fabric capacity. In a sense, this is good from a Microsoft point of view, because they are simplifying how they do licensing. So if you have Power BI Premium, now you have to move to a Microsoft Fabric capacity option. And you can see as well, when we were looking at the options in here, the Power BI Premium, not Premium per user, but Premium, is no longer available in their offering. The only challenge that I see with this, and let me know what you think down in the chat, is that many organizations had a good discount in the Office 365 stack. So if you were a non-profit organization or education, so you were getting really good discounts for Power BI Premium, on top of any discounts as part of the enterprise agreement and so on. And now you have to move to Fabric capacity, which it is managed by Azure. So Fabric capacities, they live in the Azure ecosystem. They are not part of the Office 365 offering. And that means that you don't have the same benefits and discounts that you had previously in the Office 365 offering. Let me close this window. So that's my only recommendation. They are recommending for any of you, if you're using Power BI Premium, to essentially have a chat with, I guess it'll be your account representative to transition to a suitable Fabric capacity pricing plan. I don't believe this is good enough, to be totally honest, right? I like the idea, let's go and simplify things in Microsoft Fabric. It's just one licensing model that you can use. But now, I don't believe many of you will have the same benefits that you had in Office 365 in Azure. Of course, my recommendation is have a chat with your account manager, and definitely exploring the reserve instances. That's a good place to go eventually to match some of your Office 365 offerings. something to take into account. And the other one, as you know, we mentioned this last week, that you also have a pay-as-you-go model now for your Apache Spark jobs. And another one is that you can have a Fabric capacity that you use for Copilot for all the workspaces. So independently on which other Fabric capacity you assign to your workspaces, you can use a Fabric capacity dedicated to Copilot and enable Copilot across all the workspaces. And the last one, we talked about this one last week. I think that is really good, is that you will have toward the end of April Copilot available in all the SKUs, which is a great. I think that it's great to see Copilot available for every customer and persona who wants to take advantage of Microsoft Fabric. Now, let's go and have a look at our next section, which will be looking at the sample ongoing cost. I wish things were that easy when talking about licensing. So when you look at looking at the cost analysis of your Fabric capacity, you will see a lot of different meters, essentially. Because the way that you're going to use those capacity units is not the same across all the different workloads. The number of capacity units that you will consume with an Apache Spark job, the calculation is not the same calculation as using a store procs in a warehouse, or the same calculation as using the pipelines or the notebooks and so on. So that's when you go and look at the breakdown of your usage, you will see different meters. I think that's good. That will help you tell the story on how you are taking advantage of your capacity units. Remember, so you can see here, all the ones that finish with CU, those are capacity units. And then on top of that, we have separately all the operations related to storage, because storage is going to be built separately as well. Something to take into account. So if you want to go down to this path, you can do it. There is more to it. So let me go and find something else. So let's move this to my left to make it easy for me. The next section, and all this information is available essentially in the Microsoft Land documentation. So when you look at the Fabric operations, so this talks about a topic that we covered the last week, on how you can run out of resources. But what I want us to look at is the Microsoft Fabric operations. Let me see. Scroll down. It might be here. There it is. So here you can find actually all the different meters and what they mean. So this complements, when you're looking at the ongoing cost in Azure and you're trying to find out where the information is coming from, it should be part of this documentation. As an example, let me go and look at one of the ones I had before. So we had, let's see, Power BI capacity usage CU. So let's see, Power BI capacity usage. There it is. And here you have the different breakdown on how you're using that specific meter within your Fabric capacity. And you can see this one specifically belongs everything to, people using the reports and doing things with it, but also data flow refresh and a lot of more information. I like to see as well, like maybe further breakdown. So you can see here how we're mixing some of the background operations with the interactive operations under the same meter. Hopefully they get to break down that a little bit further in the Azure portal. And let's do one more example so we feel a little bit more comfortable with this section. Let's go and pick on one that we're using a lot. Let's see, compute pool capacity usage. We're not going to be able to find that one in here. But my guess here is that this one is going to be just related to some of the overall capacity units usage. See, it should be clear on what this means. So to me, it's not as clear. I know what we're doing in this specific fabric. We're importing files, with Data Factory. We're moving those Data Factory, those files into a warehouse and so on. But I'm just surprised. Maybe these are capacity units that we're not taking advantage of. It could be that. If you know what it is, let me know down in the chat. But I wanted to show you actually a specific approach to understand what is happening with your fabric capacity. And yeah, remember, so if your fabric capacity is running, you could be wasting resources if you're not using them. And that's going to open a lot of new opportunities. And that's why we're going to move towards the capacity planning and optimization section. This one, in the moment that we thought that maybe it was going to be easier to do capacity planning for Microsoft Fabric based on the learnings, of all the cloud adoption during the past 10 years. Now, it hasn't changed. Okay, doing capacity planning for Fabric is as challenging as it was with the first cloud service offering. So there's not silver bullet, put it that way. There are calculators, there are things that you can use, and I'm going to talk about them, but there is no silver bullet. You will have to go and test your workloads in Microsoft Fabric. You get the trial capacity for 60 days that you can extend for another 60 days, and you can create multiple Fabric trial capacities currently. For doing that, for doing the testing, making sure that you understand how many resources that you are going to use, you can have a scientific way on coming up with the number of the capacity units that you're going to use, but until you are in production and you are running your workloads, you will not have at the exact science how many capacities you need. So this is the most standard approach. I know. My recommendation, run a proof of concept. You can come up with some initial capacity estimates, and I can show you the main parameters. And then you, as part of the minimum viable product, we can do performance testing. We can do performance testing in the reports. You can do performance testing in your transformations, in your data integration. You can start, schedule your jobs to run every hour, every 10 minutes, every 15 minutes. Try to load 100 tables every hour, every 2 hours, so you get an idea on how many capacity units you are going to use. And finally, once that you're in a production environment, and this is the bit that we haven't seen many organizations doing, this happens across the board. None of us likes to do continuous optimization and monitoring, but it has to happen, right? Fabric is going to help us create some data products. Those data products, they have their own life cycle, and you have to do monitoring and continuous optimization because that's going to drive your cost down. I'll give you an example. So this means that if 12 months down the path, you have to change the architecture to be more effective, that's something that you want to factor in. I'm not saying go and do it, but at least, take have a seat, think about that change, is there going to be a return of investment? How long is it going to take? And then you can make an informed decision. And some of the things when optimizing fabric capacities, right? These are my recommendations always. Look, whatever you do it the less number of times possible, because every data copy is going to count, every transformation, every refresh, every activity is going to add on the usage of your Microsoft Fabric capacities. So that means that if you can accomplish a task with 3 steps instead of 5 steps, go for it, right? If you are planning to have a medallion architecture, I will argue, do you need a medallion architecture? Or you are fine just by having a staging area and a presentation layer, like a 2-tier architecture solution. So make sure that you take this into account, because this is similar to using cloud services. The more time you use things, you use the services, the products, the activities, the more you're going to pay for it. But in our case, the more capacity units we're going to be using, and we might run out of capacity units. Keep it simpler. It doesn't mean keep it non-functional. There's a big difference, okay? You don't want to over-engineer, but you don't want to under-engineer. You want to find the right place for your architecture and your organization. So you might be thinking, right? So, okay, cool. This is easy. We get some capacity units and we spin up the capacity units and we're up and running. It's not that easy. You have to have into account the capacity units that you have available for you. And on top of that, you have to think of workload isolation. So you're going to end up with capacity for your development environments, capacities for your production environments, different workload types, different costing models. And this is because this is the right way of doing things. Let me give you an example, right? This will not go the way. If you were going to set up a data warehouse in an on-premises environment, will you put all the data transformations, the development, the UAT and the production environment, and all the reports and everything within the same server? The answer is no. You will have to set up different servers to, offer different types of workloads and with different levels of service level agreements, and you will end up with multiple servers. In Microsoft Fabric, that translates to having multiple Fabric capacities. With development and production environments, I think that's clear. So you don't want your production environments being affected by the development environment. I also suggest have the number of environments that you need for your organization. I know, yeah, we should have 4 environments. We should have dev, and UAT and acceptance and production. That might not be the right fit for your culture, for your team. If you're a team of just 2 developers, having a dev environment where you do the UAT and you do the acceptance, everything in there, and having a production environment, that could be sufficient. That could be more than enough. Okay. And now, with the workload types, let me give you an idea. Okay. So coming back with the basis that you can apply reservations, capacity units, reservations across multiple capacity units, you might want to start thinking out of the box as well. So you might have a capacity running just for doing the data import from your source systems into Microsoft Fabric OneLake, and then maybe you decide to stop that Fabric capacity. While the Fabric capacity that has the semantic models and the reports, that keeps on running. So that's a good example. So you can pause and start capacities as needed. On top of that, think about this. Maybe you don't want to go with a reservation. Why? Because your business only operates during business hours, Monday to Friday. And you only need 2 or 3 hours to load the information into Microsoft Fabric. So that means that maybe with a fabric capacities that run only 10 hours a day between Monday and Friday, that could be more cost effective than getting a reservation. So there are many scenarios that you want to factor in. I would say, look, think of a VM, a virtual machine, a server. Can you start it and stop it? Can you make it more efficient? Can you run the server for less time? And that is going to translate on using less capacity units. And lastly, so when you look at internal costing models, especially for the large organizations, or if you are thinking about passing costs to your customers because you are using Fabric capacities for offering a data product, so you have that option as well. If you are thinking about the finance department having their own Fabric capacity because they are going to pay for it, that's something that you have to factor in on how you're going to monitor, manage, and admin that specific platform. There are so many flavors to workload isolation, and you have to take into account all the different options to make it cost effective. Don't stay with the typical account manager, the salesperson, the sales representative that tells you that you have to get 2 F64 for running your workloads. Go one step further. That's great for the budget. I'm not saying it's wrong. You can still budget for those 2 capacities, but then look at the other options. Can we optimize that further? The quotas. All right. So this one is one that I wanted to mention quickly. So this is something new with many of the services in Microsoft Fabric. In Azure, you get quotas. And if you run out of those quotas, you might need to increase the number of services available that you need. So if I go to quotas in my Azure portal, you will see that Microsoft Fabric is part of it. Let me see, let's change this scope. I was expecting something here. Let me navigate to a different subscription. There it is. So it will load eventually. Let's give it a sec. A quota is basically, remember, so you have your tenant. Microsoft is allowing you to go and spin up Microsoft Fabric capacities, but there is a limit on the number of capacity units that they are allocated to your subscription within your tenant. So in some cases, if you are thinking about spinning up a really large number of Fabric capacities, maybe you need 10 Fabric capacities because of your business needs or specific use case, you will have to request an increase of the default quotas. This is essentially something new to take into account, maybe not as important until you find out that you cannot spin up another Fabric capacity. And let me show you. There are 5 questions that I thought I had them here, but they'll be closely related to the previous slide. All right. What are other considerations for capacity planning? The main considerations, is always how frequent you're going to load the data into your data analytics platform. Is it going to be once a day? Is it going to be one every hour? Is it going to be Monday to Friday? Is it going to be every day of the week? how many assets you're going to bring into Microsoft Fabric One Lake, how many data are you going to import? So two different questions. The first one is about, are you going to be importing tables from a SQL Server database, or those are REST APIs, or it's an Oracle database? Is the SQL Server within the same region where you're going to have your Fabric capacity, or it is in a different country? How is the network connectivity between that SQL Server database and your Microsoft Fabric ecosystem? What the volume of data that you're going to import? Is it only, 5 rows per table? Is it going to be a full load, 20 terabytes every day? Is it going to be incremental loads? The answer for all those questions essentially is going to drive your Microsoft Fabric consumption up or down. So you want to be as effective as you can. When somebody tells you, oh no, we might have to load this every hour, right? Okay, good. Go and drill down the question. Do they really need it every hour? And if so, with every hour means every business hour, only 9 to 5? Or does it mean all the tables every hour, or maybe just some critical tables that will have to load every hour? Those considerations are really important, as well as the number of users, who are going to be taking advantage of the Microsoft Fabric capacities. Are you going to have 50 Power BI report users, or you're going to have 500 report users? Because you might decide to go with one SKU or a different SKU, but you also have to plan for different usage. Are the different personas within the Power BI user? You have the executive level, you have the management level, you have the operations reports. So different personas, they will use the reports differently. The executive layer might look at the reports once a month. The operations people might look at the reports every hour. So many considerations that you have to factor them in as part of your capacity planning. And there was definitely one more, which is, I wanted to highlight and summarize from before, over-engineering the system. Do you have to have activities to capture logs, or is the logs that are made available by Microsoft enough? I've seen solutions where for every step in an ETL process, we write logs. And in some cases, that could be fine. Nobody's going to look at those logs unless it fails. But maybe if you're capturing that information, does it make sense to capture every single step? Or you just want to capture maybe, a start and a stop time of the whole process or for each table? So you make sure that you made the right decisions, because having, too many activities within a data factory pipeline is not effective. Another example. So if you're going to use notebooks for transforming the data, is that better than using warehouse stored procs? If you're going to, are you going to spin up an Apache Spark cluster with 4 nodes to move 5 rows between tables? So, or you prefer to run, to spin up a warehouse that helps you work with low volumes of information? All those design decisions, they are important. They're going to drive your cost up and down, as well as, of course, applying best practices for building solution. So if you're building a data factory solution or Apache Spark notebooks, you're building a warehouse, make sure you apply best practices and you define the right architecture for your organization. I'm tired of saying people, we need a medallion architecture, 90% of the businesses will be fine with having a 2-tier architecture, maybe using warehouses and staying away from lakehouses and the medallion architecture. So make the right decision for your organization, and that's going to drive the return of investment of your data analytics capabilities up in your company. Look, I know this has been a long live stream today. Don't forget to subscribe. If you have any comments, please leave them down below, and I'll reach out in the social media networks. I hope you had a better understanding now about licensing and capacity planning and optimization before than when we started this live stream. So stay tuned. See you next week.